It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. It's been hard to sit in that dark place, but for the first time being willing to confront it and to just acknowledge that it's there, not against me. It's actually there for me.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Well, last week was fun. I had Kate Mead joining me and we walked through a whole lot of really great conversations, but it's different today because my name's Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm here with my wife again. Kylie is back. Hello, Kylie.
I'm back, everybody. I'm back.
Breathing a sigh of relief. I mean, it was great spending time with Kate. I don't want to downplay the great work that Kate did with us, but there's something different when I get to hang out with you.
Oh, you're too kind.
I'm pretty excited. So we are back. The Happy Families podcast is...
Well, are we really? Are we really back?
What do you mean by that?
Seriously, all the changes that have happened with kids going back to school.
Yeah. I was... so we're in Queensland. Kids are supposed to be back at school today. This is the never-ending holiday because they've got another couple of weeks. It's like, oh, come on. I know that parents love their kids, but you get to a point when school holidays have just gone on for long enough.
You know, I think more than anything, it's the uncertainty. Our kids feel it as well.
Yes.
It's like we're supposed to be back at school, now we're not.
Yep.
It just drags on and everybody feels not so good for it.
I read a quote the other day from Winston Churchill. I'm going to paraphrase. I can't remember if I've got it exactly right, but Churchill said, and it made me think of the school holidays and the fact that they're still going. And it made me think of COVID and the fact that it's 2022. And it's still happening. In fact, I saw a funny meme. It said, think about it, 2022 actually is 2022. As well, we're doing 2020 all over again because it's still here. But this Churchill quote that made me think of COVID and the kids and school holidays and all that sort of thing. He says, when you're going through hell, keep going. I was like, oh, I don't want to say that about what's going on, but I'm kind of a bit over it. And everybody that I talk to, like last year we were talking about this thing called COVID fatigue, but now everyone is just, well, I don't know if you've had the same experience.
There's stages of grief, is there not?
Yeah.
We're moving through the next stage.
Can we just get on with our lives? Can we play? And not being political, but many conversations that I'm hearing people say is, can the government just leave us alone and make up our own mind now? Like, depending on where you sit on the fence, there are some people who are saying, thank goodness the government's protected us. And there are other people who are saying, not the government's job to protect us. The government's job is to put structures in place for us and then we get to choose. And more people than not seem to be now saying, oh, I just want to make up my own mind.
Well, it's interesting. And when the pandemic first hit, there were conversations around, do you know anyone? Do you know anyone who's had COVID?
Yeah.
And now just about every person we talk to...
Have you had it yet?
had it. And not only have they had it, they've had a mild cold.
Right, yes.
You know, the symptoms are so manageable and yet our medical teams are just being worked to the bone to have tests done for mild symptoms.
And to be fair, not everybody's having mild symptoms. There are still people who are dying from this.
No, but if I've got the flu and I've got a sniffle and a cough and a sore throat, I stay home and I take care of myself, right?
Yeah,
I don't go to the doctor.
And we didn't used to call it going into isolation either. We just be like, I'm having a couple of days off. But now it's ISO.
But if I have the flu and I've got heart palpitations and I'm struggling to breathe, then I seek medical attention quickly.
Yeah. Do you know, I reckon there's a couple of things that we can do to help make this better. First off, I think we just need to keep it in perspective. Like, what we are going through is absolutely bizarre. I've been alive for nearly 5 decades. Never in my life have I seen stuff.
You're old.
I know. I can't believe I just never seen life like this. Like, what is this? This is and for our kids, this is really hard for them as well. And as parents, I feel like we need to really provide leadership on this and be there for them and let them know that this year, especially kicking off the year, whether you're a school teacher or a parent or a student, a child, whatever, that you should expect some level of distress. Because like there are people, in fact, we probably need to talk about something that you've been through after the break. We'll talk about your last few months because they've been pretty rough. And we kind of set ourselves up and we think, if I do all of the well-being practice, if I do all of the wellness practice, my life is going to be fine and I'm going to be happy because I'm going to be meditating or reading or...
Well, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I actually think that what we often fall into the trap of believing is that if I'm doing all the right things in my life, then life should
be rainbows and unicorns.
Rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah. Let's not talk heaps about COVID. Let's actually talk about life and just acknowledge that things are pretty bizarre right now.
I'm up with that.
Okay.
Or I'm down with that.
We are
I'm
whatever.
up, I'm down.
And that's what it's been lately. So after the break, we're going to talk about some big news about the podcast. We're going to also talk about some big news about our family. And we're going to talk about why we had the worst Christmas ever.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
Are screens creating tension at home? Tweens, Teens and Screens is a webinar to guide families to healthy, safe super screen solutions. Buy it today at happyfamilies.com.au/shop.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now, and you've just put your foot on it.
Yep, it's Justin and Kylie with you for this conversation. Some good news, some bad news, and some other news as well. Let's start off with the good news. The podcast last year had 1.95 million downloads.
I can't believe we didn't make 2.
Oh, I know.
So close.
So close.
But how amazing.
1.95 million downloads.
Insane.
Thank you for allowing us to be in your life. I
feel like there should be confetti and, balloons flying down from the ceiling right now. So excited.
So this year, I reckon 2.5.
Okay.
Maybe 3.
Are you putting it on loop? Is that what you're doing?
It's
going to sit in your office on
right.
loop?
I have my phone on silent and just keep playing the podcast on repeat. I think, though, that you're going to have to lift your game, Mrs. Happy Families. Yeah.
Me?
Well, maybe me too.
Maybe that means you need to let me talk more.
Okay, you got me there. So that was the first bit of news that I want to share. The second bit of news, and we're going to talk more about this on Friday, is we've made a decision across the summer that we're going to move house. We're going to relocate. We're out of Brisbane. We're moving to the coast. It's time for a sea change.
And, COVID has been a pretty significant catalyst to that decision.
Yeah.
But we're going to share that a bit more with you on Friday.
I so much want to dive into the story right now because there's so much to it. But we'll save that for Friday, for I'll Do Better tomorrow.
Let's just say, if things sound a bit crazy on the podcast over the next few weeks, you'll understand. We're packing boxes. We're unpacking boxes.
We're living in separate houses.
We don't even know where we're going to end up.
We literally haven't chosen a suburb or a school.
But we're doing life.
Helen Keller says life is a daring adventure or it is nothing.
Yes, you've channeled that our whole married life. We're taking it to the nth degree this time.
All right, now the last thing we need to talk about is why we had the worst Christmas ever. I teased it before the break, and we need to talk about this because so often, and this is, I think it's really important that we talk about it because we're Justin and Kylie Coulson. I run happyfamilies.com.au. We're talking about how you can make your families thrive and flourish and how you can make your relationships perfect and wonderful. And we talked before about rainbows and unicorns. But life isn't always like that for us or for anybody. We've kind of had that conversation in the first half of the podcast today. And over the summer, in fact, just before summer, something started to change for you. And for people who are listening closely to the podcast, they might have heard that your energy was not where it used to be. And I kind of had to drag you kicking and screaming into the studio so we could record podcasts, and you had to breathe deep and really push through. And it wasn't because the podcast was getting you down, it was life.
It's interesting. You get to a certain point, I think, or at least I have, where you recognise that maybe the way you are responding to the people you love is not the way you want to, or situations that arise around you seem to really just get a rise out of you that normally wouldn't. And I got to that point where I just kind of was like, what is going on? Why do I respond like this? Why do I treat the people I love like this? Why do I feel, in spite of the fact that I am doing all of the things that I would normally do to keep myself upbeat and happy, why do I actually feel like I am literally the lifeblood is being drained out of me?
So I'm always talking about how the best in me needs to speak to the best in you. But what you were basically experiencing is that you could not find any best in you, and you definitely couldn't find any best in anyone else either.
Yeah. And so for me, it's always been when I get into those harder, challenging places, it's look outside yourself because there's always someone else who's having a harder time. There's always someone else struggling. And service has been a way that has lifted me and, just kind of helped me to put perspective around everything that's going on. But the more I served, the more drained I felt, the more empty I became. And then I resented having to do it. And I resented the kids needing me. I resented you wanting help. And
you resented me wanting to record a podcast with you that's really important to help other people and to run our business and do what we do.
And so for the first time, I think, in probably my whole life, I sat back and went, you know what? I don't like this. I don't like how I'm feeling. I don't like how I'm responding. I need to understand this a bit more. And so I took a week away. We had that conversation last year.
Yep.
And that actually was the start of a pretty big unravel for me.
Yeah. You came back and I was like, hang on, you've just gone and had a week away. You're supposed to come back refreshed, energized, happy, healthy. And you come back and you're more miserable than ever. And we went through, I would say, 2 or 3 of the hardest months of our lives.
We have. And through that process,
you didn't even want to put the Christmas tree up.
No, I didn't.
You didn't want to have Christmas lunch. There was no family coming over. You set boundaries and said, don't want to see anyone. I mean, it was a really, I'm going to say dark couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. And so grateful that in spite of how dark it was, that there were a few key people in my life who helped me to recognize that even though it felt like I was literally drowning in this dark space, that if I would be patient and I would just sit in that darkness and be willing to see whatever came up and acknowledge it, that I'd actually have the capacity to work through it. And so that's what I did.
And there's an old saying that sometimes you have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough.
Yeah. And I feel like that's exactly what's happened. I feel like I needed to go through that. I needed to sit in that place because the one thing that had led me to this was that I had this sense of complete emotional overwhelm all the time. And as a result, I pretty much only felt 2 or 3 emotions. I was happy, I was sad, or I was angry.
Oh, yeah. Or your physical exhaustion. It's not an emotion, I guess. But most of the time you're exhausted while you're having any of those 3 as well, underlying all of that.
And so starting life coaching and recognizing that there's more than 3 emotions in the human experience and being able to articulate what the emotion was that I was feeling in any given moment and expand it and understand that if something happens, a circumstance takes place, I'll have a thought which creates an emotion.
Yep.
What's the thought that's creating the emotion I'm feeling right now? And as I was able to work through that, then I started to understand a bit more. And then a few beautiful aha moments where it was just like, that I do X, Y, and Z because of this belief system. This belief system's not even mine. It's been sitting in my...
Yeah, I inherited this from my parents
It's been sitting there my whole life.
Yep.
And it's been allowed to be on autopilot. And I've never recognized or understood. And now I do. It's like, it literally, when I had those aha moments, it was like standing in the middle of a football stadium in the pitch black and those floodlights go on. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, that's why I do what I do.
I can't help thinking, Kylie, that there will be so many people who are listening to what you're sharing, even though you're mainly talking fairly abstractly about it and tapping into and saying, yeah, I've been there or I'm there right now. And there are probably some people who are going, wow, you only had it for 3 months, 2 months, and I'm in my 3rd or 4th year or 3rd or 4th decade. But I think that's really important, really brave of you that you shared it. So I'm really glad that you did that. Thanks.
You know, one of the biggest lessons I learned out of all of this, and I recognise that this will be an ongoing pursuit of mine through life, but the acknowledgement for the very first time in my life, I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. It's been hard to sit in that dark place, but for the first time being willing to confront it and to just acknowledge that it's there, not against me. It's actually there for me. And if I'll be open to seeing what the darkness has to show me, it actually gave me light.
Wow. The Happy Families podcast continues tomorrow. We're going to talk about, oh no.
We're not?
COVID. Well, not really. We're going to talk about kids and needles because there's
you can't make any promises.
No,
you can't.
No, I can't. We're going to be talking about not COVID, but kids and needles because there's going to be a whole lot of children who are, if they haven't already, being expected to line up and have their first shot between the age of 5 and 12. How do we get that done. Later in the week is what we're going to talk about, how to make your mornings magic, and a whole lot more on the Happy Families podcast, which is produced, as always, by the fabulous Justin Rulon from Bridge Media, with Craig Bruce as our executive producer. If you'd like more info about making your family happier, by the way, you can get everything you need at happyfamilies.com.au.